The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the desolate highway. Sarah, David, and Lisa, three friends seeking adventure, had embarked on a cross-country road trip, leaving the familiar behind in pursuit of the unknown. With a battered map and a sense of invincibility, they journeyed into the heart of a vast, uncharted wilderness. As they drove deeper into the night, the road stretched on endlessly, surrounded by dense forests that seemed to close in around them. The only illumination came from their headlights, their beams slicing through the oppressive darkness. Unease settled upon them like a shroud, but they pressed on. Hours passed, and the road showed no sign of leading them to civilization. The map seemed unreliable, and the GPS signal had long been lost. With each passing mile, the feeling of isolation grew, and Sarah's initial excitement gave way to a gnawing sense of dread. "We must be close to something soon," David muttered, trying to break the silence that had settled in the car like a heavy fog. But Lisa, who had been navigating, could only shake her head. "This road, it's not on any map I've seen. It's like it doesn't exist." Sarah's grip on the steering wheel tightened as the eerie feeling of being watched intensified. The trees on either side of the road seemed to lean in, their branches reaching for the car like skeletal fingers. A sense of isolation weighed on them, as if the world beyond the headlights had disappeared. Just when despair threatened to overwhelm them, a dim glow appeared in the distance. A single, flickering street lamp stood at the edge of a clearing, illuminating an old, weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Greyhaven." Greyhaven was not on their map, but it was the first sign of civilization they had seen in hours. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, but decided to take their chances. They drove into the town, their headlights casting eerie shadows on the dilapidated buildings that lined the deserted streets. The town seemed abandoned, frozen in time. Windows were shattered, and storefronts lay boarded up and forgotten. The streets were empty, devoid of life. The only sound was the whispering wind that rustled through the decaying structures. They pulled up to an ancient gas station, the gas pumps covered in cobwebs. Sarah, David, and Lisa stepped out of the car, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Inside the station, they found an old, dusty ledger with entries that dated back decades. It was as if time had stopped in Greyhaven long ago. As they continued to explore the town, they stumbled upon an old, decrepit hotel. Inside, the lobby was adorned with faded wallpaper and dusty chandeliers. The front desk sat empty, and the registers were filled with pages of names of people who had checked in but never checked out. The unease that had gripped them on the road now turned to dread. Greyhaven was not just abandoned, it was cursed, trapped in a timeless limbo. They were not alone, unseen eyes watched their every move. As night fell, they decided to spend the night in the hotel, unable to risk driving further on the desolate road. They chose a room on the upper floor, its windows overlooking the empty streets below. The room was freezing, and their breath fogged the air. As they lay in their beds, the whispers began. Soft, barely audible voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls. They couldn't make out the words, but the tone was mournful, filled with sorrow and despair. Sleep was elusive, and they lay awake, their hearts heavy with unease. Shadows danced on the walls, and the room felt suffocating, as if the very air had turned malevolent. In the dead of night, a figure appeared at the foot of Sarah's bed. It was a woman, her eyes hollow and filled with anguish. She reached out to Sarah, her fingers icy cold, and whispered words that sent shivers down her spine. The woman's presence was not alone, other spectral figures appeared in the room, their mournful voices joining the chorus of whispers. The room seemed to warp and shift, and the walls closed in around them. Desperate to escape, they fled the room and ran down the darkened hallways, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. But the hotel had become a labyrinth, its layout changing with each turn, trapping them in a nightmarish maze. As they ran, the whispers grew louder, an anguished cacophony that threatened to engulf them. It was as if the very town itself had come alive, seeking to ensnare them in its eternal torment. They finally burst through the hotel's front doors, gasping for breath. The street outside had transformed, the once deserted town was now filled with spectral figures, their eyes vacant and their voices a mournful chorus. In their panicked flight, they stumbled upon the desolate road once more, the very road that had led them into this nightmare. Without hesitation, they jumped into their car and sped away, leaving Greyhaven and its tormented souls behind. As they drove back into the night, they could still hear the whispers, faint but persistent, a reminder of the cursed town they had encountered. Greyhaven had become a dark chapter in their road trip, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead had blurred, and time itself had lost its meaning. And as they left Greyhaven far behind, they couldn't help but wonder if they had narrowly escaped the same fate as those trapped in the town's eternal torment.